The alarms blared through the colony's emergency systems, their shrill wail echoing across the night sky. The outer rim settlement of New Denver had known peace for years, but that peace shattered the moment Imperial dropships descended like falling stars. The Galactic Empire had come with overwhelming force, sweeping through the streets with the cold precision of a well-practiced extermination squad. Civilians scattered, trying to escape the inevitable, but resistance was futile. Emily Carter ran, her small legs pumping as fast as they could, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She had been taught what to do in emergencies. Her father had drilled it into her head 1,000 times. Hide. Stay quiet. Wait for extraction. But no amount of training could prepare a 12-year-old for the horror unfolding before her. She darted through the narrow alleyways, her mind screaming for her father, for someone, anyone, to stop this. But no one came. The Imperial troops were too fast, too many, too prepared. A pair of towering figures emerged from the smoke, their armor reflecting the burning wreckage of what had once been her home. They moved like machines, their heavy boots crushing the debris beneath them. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just cold efficiency. Emily turned to run again, but a sharp, metallic voice cut through the chaos. Stop. She froze. Not because she wanted to, but because her body refused to move. The barrel of a plasma rifle hummed with latent energy, held steady by the lead soldier. Behind him, another raised a scanning device, its red lens locking onto her with an unnatural precision. Confirming identity, the second soldier muttered, his voice devoid of emotion. The scanner beeped, processing the information. The first soldier tilted his head. Human child. No threat. Potential asset. A vice-like grip closed around her arm before she could react, yanking her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. She kicked, screamed, tried to fight, but was useless. These weren't people. They were something else, something bigger, stronger, and utterly indifferent to her resistance. Secure the package. Command wants leverage. Emily didn't know what that meant. All she knew was that they were taking her away, away from her father, away from everything she had ever known. Far above the planet, aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Vindicator, Lord Valen watched the operation unfold from the command deck. His expression was one of detached amusement. The humans had put up no real fight. They never did. Their colonies were scattered, under-equipped, and weak. A few small uprisings here and there, easily crushed under the Empire's heel. Nothing to be concerned about. A junior officer approached and bowed slightly before speaking. The primary objective is secured, my lord. The human child is in our custody. Valen barely glanced at him. And the rest? Minimal casualties on our side. The settlement is under control. Resistance was, the officer hesitated, clearing his throat. Negligible. Valen sighed. He had expected as much. Humanity was a race of scavengers, clinging to outdated weaponry, relying on archaic tactics. The Empire had fought countless species, most of them formidable in one way or another. The humans? They were barely worth the effort. Still, the High Command had issued orders. Leverage was necessary. Earth and its colonies had proven annoyingly defiant, and the child of a military family could serve as a useful pawn. Inform the High Command that we have secured the hostage, Valen said, turning away from the viewport, and prepare the fleet for departure. There's nothing left here. Deep within the heart of the Empire's vast dominion, in a classified military outpost, the news spread like wildfire. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into barely concealed laughter. A human child. That was their grand prize? The arrogance of the Empire knew no bounds. They spoke of humanity as if they were an afterthought, a nuisance to be eradicated at their leisure. No one, not a single one of them, had any idea what they had just done. The message reached its final destination, traveling through secure channels, bypassing Imperial firewalls with ruthless efficiency. Arrived at a classified military base, where a lone figure sat in the dim glow of a holographic display. His weathered hands clenched into fists as he read the report. His heart pounded, his mind processing every word with deadly precision. Emily Carter, his daughter. Major Jack Carter had been a sniper long before the war against the Empire had begun. He had fought battles no one spoke of, eliminated threats before they could become known. He was a ghost in the field, a shadow in the night. The enemy had given him many names, asterisk, asterisk, phantom, asterisk, asterisk, the Reaper, the Silent Wind, but in the end, they all learned the same lesson. You do not take what belongs to him. He stood, his movements slow, controlled, deliberate. His team was already gathering, drawn by the tension in the air, by the unspoken command that something was about to happen. Captain Briggs, Sergeant Walker, Lieutenant Ramirez, Corporal Hayes, men who had fought beside him in wars most of the galaxy would never know existed. Men who understood the price of vengeance. No one spoke at first. They didn't need to. The room was heavy with understanding. Then, finally, Ramirez exhaled sharply and broke the silence. They really did it, he muttered. They really took your kid. Briggs let out a low whistle. Damn. That's a death sentence. Walker simply cracked his knuckles. We hitting them hard or soft? Carter looked at them, his expression unreadable. We're hitting them fast. He turned to the hollow map, pulling up the Imperial prison ship's trajectory. His eyes were cold, calculating. The Empire had made a mistake, a fatal one. They had taken his daughter, assuming she was just another bargaining chip, another nameless casualty of war. They had no idea who she was. More importantly, they had no idea who was coming for her. The transport ship drifted through the void, a sleek Imperial prison vessel cutting a silent path toward its destination. Inside, locked behind reinforced energy barriers, Emily Carter sat in the cold confines of a containment cell. The room was sterile, devoid of warmth, designed to break the spirit of those within. The Empire didn't waste resources on comfort, especially not for human captives. She sat with her knees tucked to her chest, her breathing steady despite the fear clawing at her. Her father had always told her to stay calm, to think before she panicked. He had taught her how to recognize weaknesses, how to be patient. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She watched. Outside her cell, 2 Imperial guards stood in rigid formation, their armor gleaming under the artificial lighting. They barely acknowledged her, speaking in clipped, disinterested tones. To them, she was insignificant, just another captured human, another bargaining tool. Their arrogance was absolute. She memorized their postures, their movements, their weapons. Her father had always told her that even the strongest enemy had blind spots. Far away, on the surface of a remote military outpost, Major Jack Carter moved with methodical precision. His team was already in motion, gathering intelligence, preparing for an operation that had no room for failure. The mission parameters were clear: retrieve Emily, eliminate all obstacles, and leave nothing behind that could be used against them. The Empire believed themselves untouchable, certain that their defenses were impenetrable. Carter intended to prove them wrong. Captain Briggs reviewed the ship's security measures, his sharp eyes scanning through stolen schematics. The Empire relied on advanced technology, automated defenses, energy shields, biometric locks. Their systems were designed to counter high-tech threats, to combat enemies who fought like them. That was their weakness. The Empire had never faced an enemy who fought like humans. Sergeant Walker sat beside him, loading ammunition into magazines with quiet efficiency. They're expecting a precision strike, he muttered. Coordinated clean by the book. Briggs smirked. Good thing we don't do by the book. Ramirez studied the prison ship's flight trajectory. They'll be entering high orbit over Drazek, 4 before making the jump. That's our window. Carter nodded, eyes locked on the holographic projection. We intercept before they reach deep space. No warning, no survivors. Hayes tapped into the ship's comm frequencies, rerouting encrypted transmissions to their console. The Empire relied on algorithms, on predictable security patterns that assumed their enemies lacked the ability to think outside strict logic. That was their second mistake. Hayes didn't need their encryption keys, he needed time. Time to find an opening, time to exploit the arrogance baked into their systems. The moment he found it, the entire ship would be theirs. On board the transport, Emily remained silent as the guards exchanged idle conversation. They spoke of promotions, of battle reports, of humanity's inevitable surrender. Their words were filled with condescension, with the unwavering certainty that their empire was eternal. She clenched her fists. They didn't know her father. They didn't know what was coming. Carter's team launched their assault with brutal efficiency. Their dropship moved like a ghost, masked by stolen Imperial signatures. No alarms were triggered, no warnings sent. The moment they latched onto the hull, they became shadows, slipping through the corridors with practiced ease. The Empire had automated most of its security, relying on drones and surveillance grids. That was their third mistake. Machines couldn't improvise. Machines couldn't feel fear. The first guard never had a chance to react. A blade slid between his armor plates, silencing him before he could make a sound. The second fell just as quickly, a suppressed shot dropping him where he stood. Carter moved with deadly precision, his rifle an extension of his body. The Empire had never learned how to fight humans on their terms. Hayes cracked the security mainframe, cycling through entry logs and bypassing layers of firewalls designed to keep lesser threats out. Every Imperial system operated under the assumption that their technology was infallible. It never accounted for human ingenuity. Within moments, the cell doors were unlocked, the ship's automated defenses rendered useless. Emily heard the hum of the energy barrier flicker and die. She didn't move immediately, listening instead, waiting. The guards had gone silent. Footsteps approached, but they weren't heavy like the Imperials. They were controlled, precise. A familiar voice reached her ears. Emily. She turned slowly, her breath catching in her throat. He stood there, rifle in hand, expression unreadable. But she knew. She had always known. Dad. Carter gave a single nod, already scanning the area. Time to go. No questions. No wasted words. Just action. The moment the Imperials realized their ship had been compromised, it was too late. Briggs and Walker cleared the corridors with ruthless efficiency, their bullets tearing through elite guards as if their advanced armor was paper. Ramirez coordinated their movements, directing fire where it was needed most. Hayes disabled life support in key sections, forcing reinforcements into predictable choke points. The Imperials had believed their weapons, their technology, their numbers would protect them. That was their final mistake. Carter moved ahead, Emily at his side, his focus unshaken. His team had done the impossible before. This was no different. The Empire had underestimated them, had mocked humanity's old-fashioned weapons, their reliance on instincts rather than cold calculation. But in the end, it wasn't energy shields or plasma rifles that determined victory. It was adaptability. It was experience. It was the undeniable fact that humans never stop fighting. The bridge was in sight. The ship's officers scrambled for control, barking frantic orders, their illusion of superiority shattering before their eyes. The alarms wailed, the ship rocked under the weight of its own failing systems. They had never expected this. They had never considered that a handful of humans, armed with nothing but old weapons and sheer audacity, could dismantle their entire operation. Carter lifted his rifle, eyes locked on the highest-ranking officer in the room. No hesitation. No mercy. A single shot rang out. The Empire had taken his daughter. Now they would learn what it meant to cross him. The command deck was in chaos. Imperial officers shouted over one another, scrambling to make sense of the sudden intrusion. Security feeds flickered as control of the ship's systems slipped through their fingers. Their protocols were clear: contain threats, isolate breaches, neutralize hostiles, but nothing in their training had prepared them for this. The Empire had fought human soldiers before, had crushed entire colonies with overwhelming force, yet this was different. There was no prolonged engagement, no chance to rally their defenses. The attack had been precise, a ghost slipping through their grasp before they even realized they had been marked for death. Major Jack Carter moved with deadly purpose, his rifle raised as he cleared the upper deck. Emily followed close behind, her every step mirroring the discipline her father had drilled into her since childhood. This was not a rescue mission anymore. The Empire had made a mistake that could never be forgiven, and now they were paying for it in blood. Every Imperial soldier who stepped into Carter's line of fire fell before they could even react. Their armor was advanced, their weapons superior in theory, but none of it mattered. War had never been about the best technology. It had always been about the better soldier. Briggs and Walker swept through the secondary corridor, suppressing enemy reinforcements with ruthless efficiency. They moved with synchronized precision, one firing as the other reloaded, ensuring the Imperials never had a moment to breathe. These weren't standard military engagements where battlefield etiquette and rules of engagement applied. This was an execution. The Empire had believed itself untouchable, had assumed that the mere presence of its insignia was enough to invoke fear. But fear was a weapon wielded by those who had never fought against men who had nothing left to lose. Ramirez relayed movements over comms, tracking enemy positions through intercepted security feeds. They're rerouting remaining forces to the starboard corridor. If we push now, we'll cut them off before they reach the hangar. Carter didn't hesitate. We move. No survivors. Emily felt the weight of those words settle in her chest. She had never doubted her father's resolve, had never questioned the stories she had overheard growing up, whispers of the things he had done, the things he was capable of. But now, watching it unfold, seeing the unrelenting force that drove him forward, she understood. There was no hesitation, no wasted effort. He wasn't just fighting to save her. He was punishing them. The Imperials fought back with desperation, but it only hastened their downfall. They fired wildly, their panic overriding their discipline. Plasma bolts slammed into the walls, scorching metal, but hitting nothing. The humans had adapted, predicting their patterns, using their own rigidity against them. Where Imperial forces moved in controlled formations, Carter's team dissolved into chaos, controlled, strategic chaos. It was a brutal lesson in asymmetrical warfare, one the Empire had no time to learn. Hayes cracked deeper into the ship's systems, his fingers dancing across the console. They're trying to lock us out of the hangar, rerouting power to emergency bulkheads. Give me 2 minutes. Carter never broke stride. You have one. The Imperials had always underestimated human technology, dismissing their methods as crude, inefficient, outdated. They had assumed that because humanity had never reached the heights of interstellar empires, they were lesser. But it was never about who had the best tools. It was about who knew how to use them best. Carter's team didn't need energy shields or plasma weapons. They had bullets, explosives, and a lifetime of experience turning impossible situations into victories. Briggs lobbed a grenade down the corridor, timing the explosion perfectly. The shock wave sent Imperial soldiers sprawling, breaking their formation long enough for Walker to pick them off one by one. Ramirez kept watch on their six, ensuring no stragglers had the chance to rally. Hayes continued working at the console, sweat forming on his brow as the Imperial firewall resisted his intrusion. Emily kept her breathing steady, her fingers flexing at her sides. She had no weapon, no armor, but she didn't need them. She understood now. Her father had always been preparing for this. For anything. The Empire had taken her, believing she was nothing more than leverage. They had assumed her bloodline was meaningless. But they had taken Carter's daughter. And in doing so, they had signed their own death warrant. The ship groaned under the weight of the battle tearing through its decks. Emergency sirens howled as automated systems attempted to compensate for critical failures. But it was already too late. The Empire had built its war machine on the idea that it was invincible, that no single unit could ever hope to stand against it. They had never accounted for the reality of human resilience. Carter reached the final checkpoint, his boots hitting the metal floor with unwavering certainty. The last of the Imperial forces stood between them and the hangar, their commander barking orders, demanding they hold the line. But orders meant nothing when fear took over. Their hands trembled. Their weapons wavered. They had seen what had happened to their comrades. And now they realized the truth. Carter raised his rifle. The first shot rang out. The battle was over before it even began. The last remnants of Imperial resistance collapsed under the sheer weight of the assault. Bodies lay strewn across the corridor, smoke curling from shattered armor plates and scorched metal. The emergency lights flickered, casting the aftermath in a sickly red glow. Carter moved forward without a word, his rifle steady, his eyes sharp. The Imperials had underestimated them from the start, believing superior technology and sheer numbers would be enough. Now they lay in silence, their arrogance bleeding out onto the cold steel of their own warship. Hayes finished overriding the final security measures, his fingers flying across the console. A sharp beep confirmed the hangar was unlocked. "We're in." His voice was tight, the tension of battle still coiling through his muscles. Briggs covered their flank as they advanced. "Not over yet. They've got fighters docked in that bay. If they launch, this whole thing gets messy." Walker's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure they don't launch." Carter barely acknowledged the exchange. His mind was already calculating the next step, considering every possibility, every contingency. He had been in situations like this before, against insurgents, against mercenaries, against enemies who thought they could outlast him. None of them had. Ramirez adjusted his rifle. How much time before reinforcements? Hayes checked the internal systems. 15 minutes. Maybe less if they prioritize this sector. Carter nodded once. That was more than enough. Emily stayed close, her gaze locked on the bodies they stepped over. She had grown up hearing stories of war, of what it meant to be a soldier. But stories were just words. This was something else. This was what it meant to fight, to survive, to deliver the kind of justice that no court or treaty ever could. The Empire had taken her, believing she was just another human, another weak link they could exploit. Instead, they had brought the full weight of her father's wrath upon themselves. The hangar doors groaned open, revealing the vast expanse beyond. Sleek Imperial fighters lined the bay, their pilots scrambling in desperation. They had seen the security feeds. They knew who was coming. And they knew, even in the depths of their training, that they were already dead. Briggs and Walker moved first, laying down suppressing fire, forcing the Imperials to retreat behind cover. Ramirez picked off the ones who hesitated, his rifle methodical, precise. There was no time for speeches, no room for negotiations. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was an execution. Hayes hacked into the launch controls, grounding every fighter in the bay. They're locked down. They're not going anywhere. Carter's focus remained on the task at hand. Set the charges. We take the whole damn bay. Walker pulled explosives from his pack, setting them at critical points. The Empire had spent centuries perfecting its war machine, building fleets that could conquer entire worlds. And yet, all it took was a handful of determined men with nothing to lose to bring it all crumbling down. Emily felt the weight of history unfolding before her. The Empire had built itself on the assumption that it was untouchable, that its power was absolute. But power meant nothing when faced with sheer, unrelenting will. Her father wasn't just fighting to get her back. He was sending a message. The last of the Imperials in the hangar fell, their bodies hitting the floor with finality. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Walker secured the last of the charges, his hands steady despite the destruction he was about to unleash. Ramirez checked his watch. Reinforcements inbound. Carter motioned to the dropship. "We're leaving." The team moved as one, disciplined, efficient, unwavering. Emily followed, her heartbeat steady despite everything. This was her world now. There was no turning back. As the ship lifted off, the explosives detonated, ripping through the hangar in a chain reaction of fire and destruction. The Empire had taken their shot, and they had failed. The name Carter would be burned into their memory forever, a name they would learn to fear. There was no negotiation, no mercy, no escape. The only thing left was fire.